Sisasiem, 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 sisasiem. Yachkow hi, yachkow hi, yachkow hi, yachkow. Hey, it's Kai Chris Sutton.
Hi, it's Sharla Hardin.
And you're watching The Spirit Drum. Tonight, Sharla, we got a great guest tonight.
Old
buddy of mine, the voice himself, Victor Fuhrman. Vic, it's so great to have you on, buddy. How you doing?
Welcome, Vic.
Wonderful. Thank you for asking me to join you tonight.
Well, when it comes to spirit and spirituality, excuse me, you are one of the, as far as people I know, you're just a very spiritual person. And you've done so many different things in your life. And so I'm not going to sit down here and run down your biography. Why don't you tell us, why don't you tell us, Vic, in your own way? You've worked in the welding business for many, many years and done a lot of other things like that. But you're a very spiritual person. I know you're a minister because you and I have done a wedding together before, and you went to the new school at in New York. And so, what is your spiritual base, and how do you practice?
Well, my background, I would call it interfaith. I attended the New Seminary of New York in the late 1900s, and the New Seminary was founded in 1980 by a rabbi, a priest, several Buddhists, some Hindu ministers, an imam, various people from different religions. And the concept is that if you look at the foundation of every religion, the message is the same: love one another, take care of one another. And the rest of it is based on cultural diversity. And so consequently, I went to there. I was ordained and graduated in 1997. And my original premise for going there was back in the early 1900s, I got involved in the practice of Reiki, a form of healing, energy healing, which came from Japan. And in those days, if you wanted to go into a hospital to work on someone and do laying out of hands, you had to be either a licensed massage therapist or you had to be ordained in a faith where laying out of hands was considered to be a sacrament. So I didn't have 3 years to go to massage school and get a license. And consequently, I, through a number of wonderful synchronicities, and that word is a very important word in my life, and I'll talk more about that later. I ended up in this New Seminary of New York. Like I said, was graduated, ordained in 1997. And as it is with spirit, as you know, Chris, very well, whatever you think spirit has in mind for you, obviously there's always different avenues and channels for the work to be done. And it turned out that through that wonderful affiliation, I actually met the woman that I've been married to for the last 15 years, and we've been together for 20 years, my wife, Lori Sue, who's also an ordained minister through the New Seminary of New York. After 9/11, we both served as chaplains for the Red Cross at the Family Assistance Center here in New York, helping people who were waiting for word whether their loved ones had been killed or survived and how to move forward after 9/11, and that was a lot of work. And an extension of the training that I received is spiritual counseling. And I've done a lot of spiritual counseling, not only for people alive, but also spirit on the other side. And that became part of my life later on when I started working with paranormal teams, helping spirit energy that is stuck in this place to cross over to the other side.
It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Now, you and I have worked together both spiritually and with the paranormal. Not very, just one time. Actually, Vic and I met in Mineral Wells, Texas in 2015, 4 years ago. And it was a rather unique experience, I think, for all of us. It was a wedding, a young couple there who put on this event. Wanted Vic and I and Mother Christina Ray to marry them in front of a old dilapidated haunted hotel. And it was just a unique experience. But I remember, Vic and I met during the event, and we sat down. He goes, "Come over and talk to me," so I can talk to him. And he's one of these people and I don't come out of the gate real fast, usually talking about myself. I'm kind of reserved. I'm always the one that's listening, and so I'm not used to talking and about myself. And so this man had me like he'd ask me a question. I just keep talking. It's like something was drawing it out of me, and it was all good. I was very positive. It was a very good experience for me. And I'm telling this and that, and he's just nodding. And just one of these gifted people that you can, sit down and talk to and never worry a thing about if it's going anywhere else. I mean, you don't even have to ask; it's implied. You just know. And we're talking about working with spirits, and we have another odd thing that happened. Vic and I were up in the second floor of this place called the Haunted Hill House, and actually we had some other folks with us, some people who'd come to the event, and we're watching. Actually, we're watching a portal open and close. You can see all this stuff swirl and everything. And in the next room, a friend of ours, who we were Alejandro, who we were investigating with, we hear him say this. And I know Vic, you remember this. Is that
Yes.
he's talking to the spirits. He goes, "Well, hey, take some of my energy if you want to manifest or talk." And the next thing we know, we hear thump 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 down the stairs, and we go outside and we find him wandering aimlessly out in the parking lot. And for spiritually, he'd given up of himself to try to help a spirit, and there are certain rules to that. And one of the rules, and I'm sure Vic can expound on this because he's done this more than I have. I work with spirits a lot, but he's done a lot of he does counseling with the dead, and so I spent quite a few minutes out there, putting Alejandro back together, getting his energy back and things like that. But Vic, as far as your experience, with spiritually helping the dead, the paranormal, what are your experiences at, and how did you get started in that part?
It was interesting. In the early 2000s, I got involved with an organization called Paranormal NYC, a team that was founded by a good friend of mine. His name is Dom Villela. And as part of that team, I started going out on investigations with him. And one of the things that I found was that the rest of the team would do the scientific exploration. They'd use the meters and EVPs and instruments of various types and cameras and lighting and that type of thing. But my aspect of it was to use my skills as an empath and as a sensitive, energy sensitive, to be able to connect with the spiritual energy and find out what it was about, who these people were, why they were still in place if they were in place. Now, the interesting thing about that beginning path for me was that I'm also grounded in science. So a lot of the stuff that we did was to find out whether there was an environmental factor that was responsible for what people purported to be haunting. And we found that 90 to 95% of the time, it was something environmental rather than something of spirit. And when I say environmental, I'll give you a couple of quick examples. I went with him to this gentleman's home here in New York, and the gentleman was complaining about seeing apparitions and feeling sick all the time. And my eyes gazed up to the top of his living room area, and I see a vent that's covered with a piece of cardboard and tape. And I said, "Why did you cover up that vent?" He says, "Well, there are terrible smells coming from the vent." I said, "Do you mind if I go up on a ladder and take that piece off and take a look and see what's going on?" And sure enough, it was filled with fungus. So I told this gentleman, "You have the responsibility of getting your landlord, your building over here, to clean this out. This fungus is obviously making you ill and causing a lot of the things that are going on." And sure enough, he had it cleaned out. That was the end of the apparitions, the end of the illness he was experiencing. Another time we were called to a family's home where their children were having constant nightmares and waking up and seeing things. And we looked at the area around the bed, and I'm very sensitive to electrical energy. And we pulled out this bunk bed from the wall, and sure enough, there was an outlet behind it. And when we tested the outlet, it wasn't grounded properly. And free current was actually flowing into the room, and that can cause itching. It can cause paranoia. It can cause, in some cases, some people hallucination. Long story short, we put a grounding rod outside of the house. We ran it to the outlet, and that was the end of the kids' nightmares and waking up, and they slept peacefully from that point on. So 90 to 95% of the investigations that we did resulted in something like that. The other 5% was my specialty came in, where we actually sensed spiritual energy being present, and I would talk to the spirit the same way I'm speaking with you right now. You see a lot of these paranormal shows, unfortunately, where spirit is being challenged and confronted and this, that, and the other thing. And it always drives me crazy, because these were people at one point, just like you and I, in flesh, And now they're on the other side. The body may be gone, but the essence of who they are continues. We know that. And so I say, speak to them with respect, speak to them with dignity, ask questions, find out what it is that they seek. And I always ask permission. I never do this without permission, because I wouldn't do anything with you folks without having your permission to proceed to counsel you in any way or help you in any way. So consequently, 99% of the time, you have the acknowledgement, yes, I'm ready to move on. And I would just basically talk to them and tell them what to look for, where to go, what to see. People who have predeceased them, friends and family, loved ones who are waiting for them, sometimes spiritual light. And more often than not, it would be over in a matter of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was interesting, something that you just said about the electric current and how that has an effect on sleep, on nerves, on just the human body in general. And, you know, I've heard that aquariums also have that same effect because they apparently put off a lot of energy, unbeknownst to me, until I had read about this. Do you think that sometimes we are too quick to assume that activity may be paranormal or supernatural? And do you think that as investigators or as a community in general, do you think that we should try harder to explain things by science first? Or what is your opinion on that?
The foundation of Paranormal NYC by my wonderful brother, Dom Villela, the foundation is that we are there to help the person no matter what the explanation is, whether it's paranormal or not. We're there to help them, to make them feel more comfortable in their homes, to ease their fears, to look for the solution. And, you know, there's an old thing called, what is it called? Akram's, I can't think of the word right now. But it's in the absence of anything else, the simplest explanation is the best one.
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor. I'm getting older, so my memory's a little.
I can't believe I remembered that.
Occam's razor, and Occam's razor says, in the absence of anything else, the simplest answer is the best answer. And so, consequently, we want to eliminate any possible environmental factor first. And like I said, nine out of 10 times, it's an environmental factor and/or an emotional factor. Sometimes people are experiencing troubles in their life, and things will happen and they'll purport them to be something that's spiritual or supernatural, right, when actually it's just a manifestation of the emotional difficulty that they're going through at that time. So the first thing is to see whether or not there is an environmental factor. Now, one of the beautiful things about the balance of our team is that we have 2 or 3 people on the team who are very sensitive to spiritual energy, myself and 2 other people, wonderful friends. And we kind of know when we walk into a situation within seconds what's going on. And whether we're reading the environment or reading the live people or reading spirit, we know right away. So the truth is the ultimate goal. That's what it is, whether the truth is paranormal, spiritual or not. And unfortunately, and you know, I don't criticize anyone else. I don't judge anyone else. But there seems to be a rush to judgment to look for the paranormal or the supernatural before looking for natural explanations.
Logical, right.
Logical explanations and environmental or emotional explanations. And the concept being is we've got to find evidence. We've got to find proof. You know, you'll find the evidence and proof if it's there to be found. But if it's not, don't look for it where it's not. And that's my philosophy. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel lost in life? Do you seem to be stuck in emotions that are not yours? Is your home not the sanctuary it should be? Contact Spirit Mechanics, where they take a team approach to your metaphysical and spiritual problems. Spirit Mechanics specializes in aura cleansing, stone attunement, attachment removal, and house cleansings. Spirit Mechanics tailors their approach to your individual spiritual path and needs. Now find them monthly at the Central Kentucky Mystical Market in Lexington. Or on Facebook by searching Spirit Mechanics, that's MECHANIX. Spirit Mechanics, for your spiritual health and well-being.
And so many people will call you up and they want you to find a ghost or a demon or something like that to make excuses for all the other, the things that are going on in their lives. I've gotten a lot of cases like that where there's drug issues, there's violence issues and things, and they're always looking for that external factor. They don't want to look inwards, they want to look outwards and find something else is causing their problems, and instead of them having to change or face themselves, in an honest way. I did have a lady one time that called me up and thought the ghost was pestering her. There was something had to be paranormal. And so, and this is going to be kind of like both at the same time. It's kind of strange, but so she lived that way out in the country, and so she was having problems with her husband. She's an artist, and she just lost her creative touch. Nothing, she was depressed. So I came out and I did some medicine work. I did did some energy work and things like that, and the way I did it. And then I decided to take, I walked in the house. Well, geez, I really don't feel anything. But then I walked around the house, and all of a sudden I felt energy come up out of the ground. And I'm like, this is weird. Was this a vortex? And it's like, it felt like it, felt like I got bugs crawling on me. I said, yeah, that's probably a vortex. I went back inside the house. I didn't go all the way back into her bedroom. Half of that vortex was in her bedroom. And so, when I was back there, I'm like that open socket you're talking about. And I told her, I said, here's the deal. You're sleeping in a vortex, and I'm sure it's affecting the house or anything else. But she ended up moving, and her art's doing great. She's doing wonderfully. And because I told her, either you can put up with this or you can, move. And she went someplace else. And so sometimes you got a little bit of the strange and the normal, coming together at the same time without any ghost involved and those types of things. So
we had a similar situation to that, and what we did was we found that there was a part of the basement where that energy existed, that vortex type energy existed. Mm-hmm. And from the background that I've had and the training that I've had, we've put what they call cures in place. In Feng Shui, there's a thing called a cure. Yeah. And the cure is an energy device that stops mm-hmm. whatever the activity or brings energy in or stops energy from flowing. Mm-hmm. And we did a couple of things there, and that solved the problem for them. Yeah. So yes, absolutely.
That's interesting that you bring Feng Shui into this because I've often thought about this on investigations, and particularly when I would do residential. I don't do many. I don't think I've done any residential in the past year. But another thing with the flow of energy through the home, and how the your emotions that you emit can bounce off of objects, literally. And you had talked a little bit about emotionally how your energy or your mood or your behavior can affect your surroundings. It would be interesting to bring someone who is very well educated in Feng Shui. And I've read a couple of books. I can follow a couple of diagrams, but at its very essence, I don't know if you position a mirror here and put a prism here that, it will balance this or that. But it would be very interesting to bring mm-hmm. a Feng Shui expert, so to speak, on an investigation.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a good idea. My wife is a Feng Shui expert. I studied it. I'm not an expert, but I studied it with her. And the concept of Feng Shui is that, number one, the house is divided into 8 areas, or called bagguas, 8 mm-hmm. guas, or areas, and each area has a representation. One area represents your relationship, one area represents your career, one area represents your finances, family, travel, things of that nature. And in each of those areas, you have what's known as balance, and you have to have certain elements to balance each of those so that the flow of energy, it's really about maintaining a positive flow mm-hmm. of energy and not a blockage or a diminishment or to have too much of one energy. And it's all about balance and the flow of energy. And really, that's what all of this is about, whether we're talking about Feng Shui, whether we're talking about spirit. My take on this, I take a scientific spiritual approach to everything. Everything is energy. And we know from the second law of thermodynamics that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but changes from form to form. We know that we can block energy if we have a transmission of some kind, like an antenna, and we put some type of a obstruction in front of it that we're blocking the flow of energy. What happens? Mm-hmm. You lose communication, et cetera, et cetera. So what this work is all about for me personally is the restoration of balance of energy. And that's what I've been devoting really all of the work that I've done to. And it's funny how it translates between my day job, so to speak, which I've been in the welding and industrial supply industry for 40 years, including I'm a certified welding inspector, among other things that I bring to the table with my work. And it's all about energy. It's all about the other part of it is taking ownership. Chris had mentioned about people not wanting to take responsibility for things that are happening in their lives. And my philosophy is we each personally have to take ownership of our own lives and also to take ownership of our relationships with everyone else. I'm a person who finds meaning, deeper meaning in words. And if you look at the word ownership, and you take out the letters W and R, you end up with one ship. And what's that one ship? That one ship is the fellowship of all humanity, and that one ship is the one that we're sailing on together, this beautiful planet Earth, and we'll either sail together or we'll sink together if we don't take ownership of each other. And that's what it's about. I mean, it's all about ownership.
And that's so true. I mean, because that's about balance. We can own ourselves, what we do, and take responsibility for what we do, and hope to help others find the same balance. The Navajo, the Dene talk about household, which is walking in balance with everything, with nature and people. It's, beauty before me, beauty behind me, beauty above, beauty below, beauty to the left, beauty to the right. I'm walking the following path. And there's a lot of, and we, as you can tell, you watch the news for a couple of minutes, and there's a lot of imbalance out there in our ship, and that's so much. I think I know of your work, and I try to in my work to help people balance. I mean, gosh darn, if it's a person at a time, it's a person at a time. If somebody watches this show, a group of people watch this show and say, "Wow, that makes sense," and then we've helped out then too. That's what this whole thing is about. So when you're doing what you can to help bring balance to yourself and others, because that's part of our balance is helping others. That's what keeps us in balance. So how do you go about finding these situations or because we create situations. We have a class, we do a show, or we try to create situations where we can help other people. How do you go about that?
I think the best way to do that for the average person is to do something kind for someone else. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a quick example. My wife had done a wedding here in New York a couple of years back, and I had dropped her off, and then I had come back to pick her up, and I parked my car in this parking lot, and I went looking for her, and I found her. We got back to my car, and I put the key in and turned the key, and the battery was dead. Now, that was a brand new battery, a brand new situation. But sometimes spirit will intervene to put you into a situation where you can actually serve someone else or bring kindness to someone else. Mm-hmm. So we found this young fella who had helped us find the place where she was doing the wedding earlier. I said to him, "Is there any way we can get a battery jump because my battery's dead?" He says, "Look, my dad is coming to pick me up. He'll give you a jump, but you and I will have to do it because he just came from dialysis. He's not doing well. He's mm-hmm. ill, and he doesn't have a lot of energy, but." And I said, when he comes, would you mind if my wife and I prayed for him? And he said, absolutely not. So I was grateful to the father. I said, you have a wonderful son. Obviously, you've raised him the right way, which brought a smile to his face. And I said, I understand that you're processing an illness right now. Would you allow me to pray for you? And I laid my hands and I did a prayer for him. And we got the battery hooked up and the car started up. And oddly enough, I never had a problem with that battery after that, because that was the whole purpose for me to be there, right, to bring some kindness to this gentleman and to his son. A week later, I'm in a parking lot, and I come out of the building, and I see this woman trying to get her car started. And I said, would you like a jump? So I paid it forward. So this is all what it's about. And it doesn't have to be anything more complicated than a simple act of kindness. Right. If we are, it's funny, people say, what's the greatest sin? People talk about Sodom and Gomorrah in the Old Testament. And what was the great sin of Sodom and Gomorrah? And it was not about sexual perversion. It was about turning away strangers who needed a place to sleep and something to eat. Kindness, hospitality, taking care of one another. And if you look at every major religion, as I said before, the bottom line, the message is do unto others. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And if we could get that going, this world would be totally different.
And it's amazing how one simple thing within your energy can change the entire feeling of a room. You know, if you walk into a situation where, and especially in a business environment, I'm sure you've encountered this many times yourself, during a transitional period, or, you know, there's some sort of maybe a customer service issue or a conflict, a schedule snafu, and the emotion is slightly tense. If you can come in and present a more calm demeanor, and, you know, I think some people are worried about making mistakes, and if they feel as though they have made a mistake, they tend to exude a lot of anxiety. And it's amazing if you walk into a situation like that, especially at work, and you sit down and you say, you know what, we'll figure it out. It's okay. These things happen all the time. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's see what happened, and let's see what we can do to fix it. And I think that blame is a big topic right now, especially in social media. There's a lot of finger pointing, and people are afraid to make mistakes because of that finger pointing. They're afraid that they're going to be called out. I make mistakes probably 75% of the day. Is some sort of trial and error situation for me, right? And sometimes I get it right, other times I don't. But it's important to allow people to fail and to make mistakes, and then to be there to support them when they do, and to say, we all do that at some point or another. Let's see what we can do to change the course of it. And injecting a little bit of that positivity into that situation can change the entire environment. How do you think that, how do we get that message across? And where do we start with trying to help facilitate that, I guess, in our world today?
It comes down to the concept of, when we start judging someone else, what are we actually doing? Are we judging them, or are we looking at a mirror of ourselves and finding out, you know what, this is something that I'm capable of doing? You know, are we angry because they're doing something, or are we angry because we see something that we've done? And there's a wonderful old expression that was life-changing for me. About 30 years ago, someone said, why do you care about what someone thinks about you? Just think to yourself, what you think about me is none of my business. And it made a lot of sense. It made a total sense to me. And it diffused that situation where I would start feeling uncomfortable, self-conscious, foolish, because of something that I had done or made a mistake. And the greatest teachers that I've ever had are the ones that said, okay, how are we going to fix this? What can we do to turn this around? And what can we learn from this experience? And by doing that, by providing guidance that's calm, that's in a mentoring type of way. And after 40 years in the industry that I've been, I'm mentoring a lot of young people right now. That's downloading the contents of this brain for the last 40 years and sharing it with others. Imparting upon them this concept of relax, look at the situation, what do we have to do to turn it around? And that's really what it's about. You hear the term on social media about haters.
Right.
This person's a hater, or negativity being flung from one person to another. And one of my wonderful teachers in the seminary used to use an expression: hatred is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, hatred doesn't do anyone any good. And it's, you know, I'm human. I can get upset in a situation, especially drivers here in New York are really turn me, you know, sometimes. But then I think to myself, you know what? There, but for the grace of God or Spirit go I. And why bother? Why should I feel bad inside for something that someone else has done? And can I also see myself having committed the same offense to someone else? Absolutely. And that's the way we have to start thinking in this world. There is so much hatred and so much anger. And it's just a question of seeing each other with the eyes of humanity and recognizing that we're all really the same.
Yeah.
And that's what it is for me.
Akashic Awareness is a metaphysical healing and learning center unlike any other. A large selection of crystals, gems, and minerals greet you as you walk in the door, but from that point onward, the journey is yours. They offer a great selection of metaphysical tools, state-of-the-art holistic healing, with classes and lectures scheduled throughout the month. Akashic Awareness is open Tuesday through Saturday, noon until 6:30, 7 on Friday and Saturday. Visit their website for a current calendar of their almost daily special events and guests at akashicawareness.com. And while you are there, be sure to join their email list to stay current. Akashic Awareness, 328 Sycamore Street, Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
Join us at the Universal Energy Expo May 2nd and 3rd at the Northern Kentucky Convention Center. Meet celebrity guest Coyote Chris Sutton. Door prizes and workshops available with admission. While here, check out our readers, healers, and one-of-a-kind vendors. Admission the day of the event is $15 daily, $20 for a weekend pass. Discount tickets now available at the Silver Wolf at 4205 Richardson Road in Independence, Kentucky. The Universal Energy Expo. Come curious, leave enlightened.
The hate and anger is almost, it's really neat for anybody that's sensitive. It's become palatable. You know, Sharla, I know that we've talked about that, and Vic, I know you felt it. And I've talked to people from coast to coast, and it's like, ugh, it's almost, it's the toxic, it's almost like breathing poison air to somebody who's sensitive. And so it's really difficult to stay steadfast. I mean, you know, part of it, it's like, I'm going to protect myself and, you know, health everybody else, but you can't, you know, I can't allow myself to do that any more than either one of you two could. You just have to get up every day. And you guys are in business. I'm in social service. I've been in social services for 30 years. So I can act goofy and stuff, and everybody knows it's you know, it's me and it's social services. I'm going to be all coyote. But you and Charlotte, Charlotte's a life coach too, and doing what you do in the business world, I mean, it's fantastic because everybody sees that as, you know, dog eat dog and whatnot. But the more humanity you bring to it, more empathy, and that's one thing we're missing so much is empathy for each other. Because damn, we're all in the muck, and we've got to help each other out.
Compassion. Compassion is the name of the game. That's what it's about. You know, it's funny. I started bringing that into the workplace probably about 20 years ago, little by little, because sometimes in the workplace it's not appropriate. You know, starting sitting someone down and counseling them in a way that's other than a business-oriented way. But what I've come to find is that more and more this is being accepted. And when people find out about the wacky stuff that I do, you know, they say, that's interesting, let's talk about it more. And it's okay, it's becoming accepted. And someone recently has asked me, the funny thing is, how do you balance that you've been in the business world, and sales in particular in the business world, for 40 years with this other stuff that you do, you know, ordained interfaith minister and spiritual work and all of this stuff that you do? And very, very organically, I said, the day job pays my salary. The other stuff pays my soulary. And this word soulary just flowed from me.
Soulary.
And actually, that's the title of the book that I'm writing right now. It's called Soulary, which talks about
fantastic.
all of these experiences that I've been through. You know, we talked about the word synchronicity a little bit earlier. I was mentioning synchronicity. And synchronicity for me, people say, I met someone, it was a real coincidence, and they brought some information to me that I needed to hear. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that everything happens for a higher purpose. And synchronicity is what it's all about. And it's my belief that, not my only belief, it's my experience, that if you're on a path and you're open to receiving information, people will come your way and will meet you and will either give you some information that you'll either resonate with and go with, maybe a part of it, or maybe not at all. You have that choice. We have that freedom. But if we find something that makes sense, it resonates with us, it vibrates with us, and we agree with it, and we embrace it and take that and move forward, then the next person will come along, or the next piece of information will come along. Funny, when I first read James Redfield's Celestine Prophecy, and I guess that's now like 25 years ago.
Yeah, you're aging us, buddy. You're aging us quick.
I know, we're aging us, yeah. But when I first read that book, and I said to myself, take away the adventure story, he's talking about what I'm living right now.
Sure.
About these insights coming, people coming and bringing you information, these insights. And it's there for every one of us. You don't have to be special. It's for everyone. There's no such thing as a special person. If you open up your eyes and your mind and your heart, then this stuff will start coming your way.
Yeah. You let the universe, you let the universe know you're ready, and here they come.
When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Teacher appears.
It's funny. I learned something from my father very early on. My father's never met a stranger, and I was just talking about this with my son. You could go to grab an ice cream with my dad, and the next thing you know, you're sitting in a garage in the middle of Florida, where some gentleman has a collection of antique cars, and you're hearing, my dad, he's very, very smart man, and he will speak to just about anybody. And before you're done, you'll have their entire life story, and you'll be invited over for dinner. And it's that philosophy that you can learn from anybody that I think is so important for people to understand and to truly take to heart. Even if you think that you can't learn something from someone, to humble yourself and to listen to what they have to say or learn from their experiences, because everybody has that backstory, right? Everybody has, whether it's 40 years experience, whether it's 50, whether it's 2. Oftentimes you can learn what not to do, right? In the same way. Yep. But everybody has something to offer. It's something that they've overcome or something that they're going through that you can learn from. And I think it's so important to remain open to that at all times, to get that message and to understand what the meaning is and why, when you're talking about synchronicity, why it is that you're seeing what you're seeing in that moment and where that can take you from there.
The key word that you used was listen. Listening is a lost art, which I hope is restored to our world. We talk at each other, but we rarely listen. And that's the thing that I try to impart to the people that I work with in business and also people that I work with in spiritual counseling. One of the greatest gifts that we can give to one another is to give them the sacred space to speak their piece and to listen. And just listen, without interjecting opinion, without telling them they're right or wrong, just to give them that beautiful synchronicity, beautiful sacredness of listening. One of the gifts that come from spiritual counseling is learning how to truly listen and to listen sacredly, because we can listen and goes in one ear out the other. But if we truly listen to each other and hear what we have to say, there is so much not only to learn, but also to share and to support and give. Dealing with people who are grieving is something that I've been called to do a lot. And to give them that sacred space to cry and to tell the story of their departed loved one, whatever it might be, and to let them process whatever it is that they have to process that time without putting our own ego into it is such a sacred gift, and I believe in that strongly.
That's true. Too often we sit there and instead of listening, we start thinking what we're going to say next and totally miss. And I think, I know as a counselor, that sometimes I've been guilty of that. What should I say next? Instead of really being present, about being the present, being very focused on what the person's saying. There's in some of the native tribes, they have a custom where when somebody speaks, you wait like a minute till after they're done speaking to make sure they don't have more to say, especially with an elder. And if we all, again, it's a competition all the time. Who's going to say the most clever thing, or who's going to make this big breakthrough in this? And we're not truly getting the whole message of what the person has to say, and it's difficult when you don't listen fully.
And when you start listening fully, you'll get the guidance as to when to say something if there is something to say. And you'll also get the guidance when not to say something. It's funny. Maybe this is also part of getting older, a little bit of maturity involved. But when I was younger, I know that if someone said something that I disagreed with, I had to respond right away. I couldn't hold it back. And I've now learned that, when something pops into my mind in a response to someone, do I really need to say that is the question that comes in my mind. And More often than not, the answer is no. Hold back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A little
usually
bit
the
more.
first
Just,
thing
I
you
just
can
want to
say.
know. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. As usually the first thing you want to say is not was not correct anyway, Ian, because it's unfiltered.
That's
So
it.
yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
it. And you know what? Being honest is not a bad thing,
Oh,
but sometimes it's not necessary to express that also.
right.
You know, you don't have to be right to be right.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, just getting back to a little bit about my story, I just want to give you a little of my backstory because we didn't know. I've had a weird life. I guess most of us have had weird lives. But a recent thing that happened between myself and my mom is in her late 80s now, and she's not well. But I take her out to lunch. She's down in South Jersey, and it's a couple of hour trip, and I try to get there at least once or twice a month. She lives by my sister down there in a nursing home. And when I was a kid, I had a lot of strange experiences. When I say strange, I will say that I know that I had contact with extraterrestrials, and
Okay.
that I don't use the word abduction. I refer to it as night school because, quite frankly, whenever it happened, I had knowledge the next day that I had no explanation for. That being said, so I said to my mom, I was sitting with my mom about a year and a half ago, and she has Parkinson's disease now. I have an autoimmune condition. My sister and brother both have, and we're all different autoimmune conditions. And my mother said, "Why do I have Parkinson's disease?" No one in our family ever had Parkinson's disease. I said, "Mom," I said, there are some people who think that families who've had contact with aliens, extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, sometimes have genetic changes." And I said, "My brother has this, my sister has this, I have that, you have that." I said, "But you never believed any of the stories I told you. When I would have these experiences, you always told me it was my imagination." I said, "You never had a strange experience, did you?" She goes, "No, except at that time you were about a year old." And I say, "Oh, here it comes."
Mm-hmm.
You were about a year old, and it was about, so it would have been January of 1954. She said, "I heard you crying about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got up to give you a bottle. And I walked into the kitchen, and then all of a sudden this weird light came through the window, and that's the last thing I remember." I said, "Mom, thank you for telling me this, all these
Mm-hmm.
years later."
Wow.
I said, "Was there anything else that happened?" She goes, "No." She said, "Except that time your father was in the hospital and I was in the waiting room." And I was saying, "Oh my goodness, we're going to get a litany of these stories now, which will confirm everything that I experienced when I was younger."
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason for me sharing this is I know there's a lot of parents who have children who are either psychically open, empathic, have
Mm-hmm.
strange experiences. Never tell your child it's their imagination.
That's
Listen
right.
to what they have to say, believe them, encourage them. If they're telling a story, have them, if they can draw, have them draw what they're experiencing, have them write what they're experiencing, but always encourage them to share because ultimately there's a truth involved. And so, when I meet families with kids who have children who are slightly psychic, I always say encourage, who
Mm-hmm.
are sensitive and see and feel and hear energy. I said encourage them, don't discourage them.
Yeah, definitely. My daughter was about 3 years old, 2 or 3, must have been kind of closer to 2. And she laid down for a nap, and I heard her stirring, so I went and got her, and she sits up, and I was cuddling her, and she looks at me, and she goes, "Dad," and most um, adult voice you can imagine coming out of a 2-year-old going, "I miss him so much." I'm like, wow, she was back, another life, and so like, "Oh yeah, I know, baby, I know." And then she woke up fully, and I just hugged her, and we hugged for a while, and I didn't say, "Oh, they were silly." No, I knew what had happened. But yeah, you have to encourage that because I wasn't encouraged, and I was empathic and could sense things about people. Of course, my mom and dad didn't believe in that stuff, and so I was suppressed until I was about 35 years old. So it finally came back out.
And
You're
very
right.
interesting, in my path of reemergence happened in my mid to late 30s also.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a lot of us who had experiences as a kid sort of lost them, or not lost them, sort of put them away during
Right.
adulthood and raising families and getting careers established. And then later on, after the career is established and the family sort of growing, that spark comes back again, the remembrances. And I think that's special. I think there's a lot of us going through that right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's kind of an awakening going on? I mean, I've heard this at times where sometimes there's like around the globe that people are saying, people are starting to wake up. So I never know. I don't have my finger to the pulse of what's going on all over the place spiritually all the time. Have you encountered anything about that, or in recently that you can think of?
I can share that a lot of the people, I have a show on Om Times Radio called Destination Unlimited. And a lot of the guests that I have on are authors and people who are experts in various fields. And my show is the crossroads of science and spirituality. And what I find is a lot of the people who come on the show and share their information, and I'm saying to myself, I know this person, even though I've never met them. I know exactly what they're talking about. There's a community right now, an emergent community of people who have an understanding of energy, an understanding of spirit, an understanding of the various things that are happening right now. I was a child of the 50s and the 60s, and I was a part of the hippie movement and the peace movement and love and everything. And that seems to have somewhere gone astray. There was an old line from a song, "We haven't come this far to lose our way," and I think we sort of strayed off the path. But I think that there's a group of people like yourself, Chris, Sharla, myself, people who are reemerging and recognizing that we need to bring this message to the world, and we need to bring this message to the world now. And I think that's what it's about for me.
Everyone is talking about CBD oil, and it seems like almost everyone is using it. The research is ongoing, but the apparent health benefits are overwhelming. If you're going to use CBD products, though, what brand should you buy? First, find out where the hemp was grown. Imports are flooding the market. How potent is it? Look for a brand that plainly states its concentration on the label. And look for full spectrum CBD. This means the oil contains CBD and all the other cannabinoids, terpenes, and nutrients that are found in the entire cannabis plant. Look for Blue Leaf CBD oil. Blue Leaf Naturals is a Kentucky proud company. They use only Kentucky-grown hemp, supporting Kentucky farmers and businesses. Visit their website at blueleafcbd.com now and use the code SMILE at checkout for free shipping.
Coyote Chris Sutton.
Shamanism.
Spiritual advisement.
Paranormal investigations.
Inspirational presentations.
Bringing light to the darkest places for over 20 years. Go to coyotechris.com to learn more.
I know it's scary times. I mean, it's almost like there's two polarities going, the hate coming out on one side, but then love coming out on the other. And I run into people who come to me and it's like, I just felt the need to come and talk to you, come to your class, come to you. I do a spiritual group once a month, and people show up, and say, I don't know why I'm here, but I want to be here. And so, you have a seat because you're in the right place.
Absolutely.
And so I think the more that it gets generated, I mean, then the energy generates from that, and it infects positively other people. When you get on your show and you do your work and do it creates an energy that keeps rolling. It keeps going. It's got more legs than hate's got. Love has much more legs. Hate is gone quickly. It has to be kept going. So if you break that chain, then you start bringing doubt about hate, and then you can start turning the tide.
Where if you think about it, where does hate, especially the type of hate that you see manifest in people who will kill each other in the name of whatever their faith might be, where does that come from? That comes from a basic fear of being subjugated and put down, and of losing their identity, and so on. And it's interesting, when I was in the seminary, my wonderful teacher had a concept called the fractured Messiah. And what the fractured Messiah is that people are all waiting for someone to come and turn things around, to deliver them. Christians are waiting for the second coming of Jesus. Jews are waiting for Moshiach, which is Messiah, the same word as Messiah. The Islamic people are waiting for the Imam Mahdi, which is the return of the great Imam. The Hindus are waiting for the next incarnation of Vishnu, etc. People, whatever the faith is, people are waiting. And what the fractured Messiah says, we don't have to wait. It's right inside here. It's in our hearts. And if we see that within ourselves and then see that within each other, then we have everything we've been waiting for. The Messiah is here. It's just we have to recognize it.
Yeah. Sounds like the Gospel of Thomas there, lift a stone, I am there, split a piece of wood, I am there, and then it's inside of us. It's all, the God self is inside of all of us, and
That's it.
it's there.
That's the bottom line message, absolutely.
And we need to start looking in, not always looking out, so.
Yeah.
I think to answer your question too a little bit, Chris, is that I think that I see more people now seeking something. There's an outlet for just about any hobby, opinion, that you have or that you could ever want, right? There's a social,
Sure.
there's a Facebook group for that. People who like blue shoelaces, there's a Facebook group for that. But I think the more that people engage in those types of situations, I think the more they are disheartened by the humanity that eventually rears its ugly head within those groups, right? You could think that you found the perfect group, that this is where I need to be, and then suddenly something happens, and there's
Right.
some sort of dramatic crescendo that
Sure.
it just
There's a
takes
hollowness
you
to
right
it.
back down
Yeah,
to where you
yeah.
were at the beginning. But I think the message there is not to lose hope, and not to so
Right.
much, like you're saying, seek it out there, because it's all in here.
Absolutely.
And that's happening there that's not your bag to carry. You can only be responsible for what you can be immediately responsible for, and that's your energy that you put out, your reactions, your action, and sometimes your inaction. But I do see that, like you're saying, that people come up to you and they don't know what they want to say. They just know that they want to be there in that moment, and they don't even sometimes know why. But
Yeah.
there's something that you're giving off that they are seeking within themselves.
What is it that everybody wants?
Security, love,
Love.
validation.
That's the bottom line. And how many people have found love within themselves?
Not many. It's hard to do.
It's a wonderful song from 1970. I was 17 years old. And you're too young to know this, Sharla, but a group called the Moody Blues was around at that time, still around. And they had a song, Justin Hayward was the leader, the singer, had a song called Question. The album was called Question of Balance. And the lyric went, why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door with 1,000 million questions about hate and death and war? It's when we stop and look around us, there is nothing that we need in a world of persecution that is burning in its greed. Why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door? Because the truth is hard to swallow. That's what the war of love is for. And then it goes to a softer refrain, and it says, it's not the way that you say it when you do those things to me. It's more the way that you mean it when you tell me what will be. And when you stop and think about it, you won't believe it's true, that all the love you've been giving has all been meant for you. That's what it's about.
I can't think of a better way to end it.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
What more needs to be said?
Beautiful. I mean, and as usual, my friend, you always bring the right thing. And so we're so glad to have had you on. And is there anything you want to say? I mean, I can't tell you, can't doubt. And I know how big of a Moody Blues fan that you are. And so I can't think of a better way. But is there anything you want to say before we get out?
First, I'm honored that you asked me to join you on this program. Thank you very much for having me on. I also want to say that, Chris and I we had met in Mineral Wells, Texas. We had never met each other before.
No.
And along with Christina Rake, and the three of us three strangers came together for a common purpose, which was to co-officiate a wedding. And we left as brothers and sisters. And just, that's what it's about. I believe that that's what this community is about for all of us. And that if we start embracing each other again as brothers and sisters, we change the world. And that's it. People want to learn more about my show, Om Times Radio. It's Wednesday night. My show is called Destination Unlimited. It's Wednesdays at 8:03 p.m. Eastern. And it's omtimes.com/IOM. And that's the player of the radio, the podcasts. And then the next day they're in various podcast sites all over the YouTube and Spreaker and many of the podcast sites. And they call me the voice, Victor the Voice Fuhrman. Somebody dubbed me that. And they said, you have that wonderful radio voice. I said, this voice was not about radio. This voice was given for me for healing. And that's what I use it. So.
And you do it very, very well, my friend. Folks, thanks for joining us for this edition of the Spirit Drum. We'll see you next time. So from Sharla and I, and many thanks to our friend Victor Fuhrman, good night.
Thank you, Victor. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
C-sa-c-m, 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 yetch-cow-hi, 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 yetch-cow-hi.